industry is a monster.
I mean, you have to have boundaries. You have to have limits that you refuse to cross.
I think black men get so much criticism for wearing dresses in movies when whites have won Academy Awards for doing said same.
Remember when Dave Chappelle warned everyone that Hollywood was a monster? He wasn't being dramatic at all. Looking back now, it feels like he was calling out exactly what's being exposed today, long before anyone else dared to say it out loud. New recordings and stories are surfacing that reveal what many black comedians were allegedly pressured to do just to get a shot at fame, and some of it is deeply uncomfortable to hear. These revelations shine a light on humiliation rituals, forced image changes, and strange behind-closed-doors expectations that were never meant to be public. People are finally connecting the dots and realizing why so many comedians looked uneasy during their rise, even when success came fast. It wasn't just jokes and talent, there was a price attached. By the end of this breakdown, it becomes clear why Dave Chappelle walked away from a massive deal and didn't hesitate for a second. Turning down that kind of money shocked the industry, but now it makes a lot more sense. He wasn't running from success, he was running from something darker. Let's rewind for a moment and set the stage properly. There was a moment on his show where Dave said the industry was a monster, and people laughed it off at the time. But that wasn't a punchline. That was a warning hidden in plain sight. And now those words are hitting completely different as more details come out.
I believe that they gave me a raw deal because this industry is a monster. It's the same monster that these Me Too is trying to tell you about. But they hate the monster for how it and I hate that monster for how it eats. But my God, man, it's the same monster. When I quit the show, all my friends would say, well, them, Dave, why don't you just do Chappelle's show at another network? Yeah. And why doesn't a slave run from one plantation to another plantation because the master over there might be nicer? My God, man, I was trapped.
In this clip, Dave explains why he felt the industry gave him a raw deal, and he didn't hold back. He said Hollywood is a monster, the same monster people later pointed to during the Me Too movement. But the part that really stuck with people is when Dave said he hated the monster for how it eats. That line wasn't about anger, it was about survival. When Dave walked away from his show, friends kept asking why he didn't just take it to another network. His answer stopped everyone cold. He said moving networks wouldn't fix the problem because the system itself was broken. He compared it to escaping one bad situation only to land in another that looks nicer on the surface. That wasn't about money, it was about control and dignity. Dave wasn't just talking contracts or ratings, he was talking about being trapped inside a machine that uses people until there's nothing left. That's the core of what this video is about.
So let me ask you this. What is happening in Hollywood that a guy that tough will be on the street waving a gun, screaming, they are trying to kill me?
Today we're breaking down why Hollywood allegedly pressures black comedians to cross lines they never wanted to cross just to stay relevant.
Why is Dave Chappelle going to Africa? Why does Mariah Carey make a $100 million deal and take her clothes off on TRL?
Names like Kevin Hart, Tyler Perry, and Chris Rock often come up in these conversations, with critics arguing they had to make uncomfortable compromises to get ahead.
A weak person cannot get to sit here and talk to you. Ain't no weak people talking to you. So what is happening in Hollywood? Nobody knows.
Before jumping to conclusions, context matters. There's old interview footage of Dave where he talks about Hollywood in a way that still sends chills. In that interview, Dave asks a question that cuts straight to the heart of the industry, and it changes how you see everything. Let that really sink in for a moment. Dave Chappelle wasn't saying Hollywood breaks weak people. He said it breaks strong people. That detail matters because strong people are harder to control, and that's exactly why the system targets them first. Now, here's what allegedly happened to Dave himself. According to Cat Williams, the Chappelle Show brought in massive money, but Dave was only offered a small cut of what it actually earned.
It's a very real thing. It's very spiritual. There's some people don't believe in God, but do believe in the devil. Well, where'd the devil come from? How do you believe in one and not the other? You don't believe evil exists?
When Dave questioned how fans would react to that imbalance,
Selling your soul. You don't have a soul. It means you don't have a say. You just do what they tell you to do.
the response he allegedly got was chilling. The message was clear: push back and your image gets destroyed. And that's exactly what people say happened next. Dave left Los Angeles, and before he even landed back home, the narrative was already set. Headlines painted him as unstable, confused, and unable to handle success. Suddenly, the story wasn't about contracts, it was about his mental state. For years, he was shut out of movies, TV, and major platforms. But this was never just about money. It was about control, about punishing someone who refused to play along. Dave stepped away with his dignity, and Hollywood made sure everyone else got the warning loud and clear. And this connects to something Dave warned about long ago, the humiliation ritual, especially for new black male comedians trying to break through. People once laughed at that idea, but now the pattern feels hard to ignore. Cat Williams has openly questioned whether certain careers rose naturally or through uncomfortable compromises. He's pointed at repeated examples, saying success sometimes comes with strings attached, and once you see it, you can't unsee it.
The worst thing to call somebody is crazy, is dismissive. I don't understand this person, so they're crazy. That's bullshit. These people are not crazy. They're strong people. Maybe the environment is a little sick.
Think about this for a second, because it really doesn't add up. Kevin Hart arrived in Los Angeles and almost instantly landed a network sitcom and a major studio movie like Soul Plane. That all happened within his first year on the scene, and people noticed right away. That kind of fast-track success is almost unheard of in comedy.
I believe that they gave me a raw deal because...
Be real for a moment. Has there ever been another comedian who moved to LA and within a year got that level of exposure, budget, and backing? People struggled for decades before even getting a pilot episode. But with Kevin, the doors flew open immediately. Not before him and not after him either. That's why Cat Williams started asking uncomfortable questions. He said people need to understand what a plant really means. Not talent, not hustle, but someone carefully positioned and pushed forward by powerful forces. And when you line up the timeline, the deals, and the opportunities, some folks say it's hard to ignore, where the conversation turns unsettling. Because it's not just about early success, it's about what allegedly comes with it. Once you start looking deeper, patterns begin to show up that people don't like talking about. And that brings us to this clip of Kevin Hart at the Oscars. This moment made a lot of viewers pause, rewind, and question everything they thought they did it. Kevin Hart was presenting an award to a very young nominee, Quvenzhané Wallis, who was only 9 years old at the time. On the surface, the jokes were framed as playful and part of a comedic bit, and the audience laughed along. But when you slow it down and actually listen, many people feel the humor crossed the line. At the time, it was brushed off as just comedy or playing a character, but critics later said the moment felt forced and awkward. They argue it wasn't about being funny, it was about pushing boundaries on a massive stage. Millions of people were watching, and that pressure to perform seemed heavy. What made this stand out even more is what Kevin Hart had said before that moment. He publicly talked about having limits. He said there were certain things he wouldn't do, certain lines he wouldn't cross, and certain roles he would turn down to protect his image. That's important context. So when people look back at that Oscars appearance, they don't just see a joke. They see a moment where expectations, industry pressure, and public performance collided. Whether intentional or not, it sparked debate about how far comedians are pushed in high-profile spaces, and that conversation hasn't gone away. Here's where things really start to connect. Kevin Hart once said very clearly that you have to have boundaries and limits you refuse to cross. He made it sound like those lines were non-negotiable. But then the offer came, and suddenly the dress showed up, and he wore it. Cat Williams summed it up perfectly when he said Kevin wasn't going to wear a dress until they offered him the deal. That moment told a lot of people everything they needed to know. And this is where some folks pause and ask, is wearing a dress really that serious? On the surface, it looks like just another comedy bit, but critics argue it's not about clothing at all. They say it represents submission to a system that rewards obedience. It's about showing you'll go along with whatever's asked, even if it contradicts what you once said you stood for.
9-year-old Oscar nominee, Quvenzhané Wallis.
Wow. Wow. I don't think anyone saw this one coming.
Kevin isn't the only name that comes up in this conversation. Tyler Perry is the wealthiest comedian alive, worth over $1 billion. His rise is closely tied to the Medea character, which he introduced in stage plays before bringing it to film. The movies were massive financial hits, and Medea eventually became the centerpiece of his empire. Over the years, Tyler has defended the character as a tribute to strong women, while critics argue it reinforces stereotypes. Tyler pushed back, saying not everything needs to be canceled. But some people keep asking the same question. Why does this pattern keep repeating? Why does wearing a dress seem to be part of the formula for success? And it doesn't stop here. This discussion goes even deeper, and Damon Wayans has spoken openly about it too.
I told you he wasn't gonna wear no dress until they offered him the dress, and then he put it on.
Definitely haven't ran into to put on the dress. I mean, you have to have boundaries. You have to have limits that you refuse to cross.
Truly adorable, and everyone loves it.
Key hominem.
This, of course, translates from the Latin to who demand,
Ego sum hominem.
which means I'm demand.
He went on to explain that the real issue isn't wearing a dress by itself. He said, if someone chooses to do it and it's genuinely funny, then there's no problem. He even pointed out examples like White Chicks and Big Mama's House, saying those performances worked because they were intentional and comedic. He also mentioned actors like Dustin Hoffman and Robin Williams, who won major awards for similar roles. But here's the key difference, and this part matters. Those actors chose those roles as part of their craft.
You think black men get so much criticism for wearing dresses in movies when whites have won Academy Awards for doing said same?
According to critics, many black comedians are told they have to do it if they want real opportunities.
Blacks is gay.
That's not artistic freedom, that's pressure. And that's where people say the line gets crossed. And it didn't stop with just a few names. Even Chris Rock has been brought into this conversation, with footage from early in his career being pointed out by fans.
Me, it's like, is it funny?
Right.
Right? To me, Tyler Perry in a dress, all day, every day, I'm there.
Right.
Hello. That's funny.
Yeah.
I don't care.
When people say this isn't a pattern, others argue the receipts suggest otherwise. So the bigger question becomes this: is this really about comedy choices, or is there something deeper happening behind the scenes?
Selling your soul in Hollywood, is that a real thing?
Oh, yeah. I believe it begins with the choices you make with what you find acceptable. If you get a role and it requires you to do certain things that you think is acceptable and you do them, then you'll get that call. Then you'll know.
Some believe it's part of a system that pushes performers to compromise who they are just to move forward. As more legal cases and investigations unfold, people keep revisiting warnings made years ago by outspoken figures. What once sounded like jokes now feels more like cautionary tales, and that's why this conversation refuses to go away. Omar explained it in a way that really stuck with people. He talked about how some individuals will pray in public, speak about faith, and present themselves as grounded, but behind the scenes, they're willing to do anything if it gets them what they want.
Red pill, blue pill, which one do you want? No. They put you through the test, they know who they can get away with what.
That contradiction weighs heavy over time.
Things on camera because they're comfortable doing them. If they're uncomfortable doing them, they shouldn't be doing them. It's just that simple.
According to Omar, you start seeing the damage later. Emotional breakdowns, burnout, and people struggling with the choices they made to reach the top. He also broke down the dress conversation in a way that made a lot of sense to viewers. Omar said once Hollywood sees you've already crossed certain lines, like agreeing to things you once said you wouldn't do, they take note. From that point on, the pressure increases. They know where your limits are, or worse, that you don't have any left. According to him, that's when the money starts flowing. The bigger checks come with bigger expectations. You're rewarded for compliance, not just talent. And once you're locked into that system, it becomes harder to say no without risking everything you've built. Omar's message wasn't about blaming individuals. It was about exposing how the system works. He was warning younger artists to pay attention, because every choice sends a signal, and once that signal is sent, the industry doesn't forget it. When I first heard all this, it completely changed how I look at Hollywood. It stopped feeling like a place built on talent and hard work and started looking more like a system that rewards sacrifice over skill. It's not about who's the funniest anymore or who put in the most grind. It's about who's willing to give up the most just to get through the door. And that's exactly where Dave Chappelle drew the line. He refused to trade his dignity for approval, even when the money was life-changing. That decision cost him years in the spotlight, but it also protected something way more valuable: his freedom, his voice, and his sense of self. Now, this is where I want to hear from you. Do you think Dave Chappelle was right the whole time? Do you believe the humiliation ritual is real, or do you think people are finally noticing patterns that were always there? And do you think more celebrities need to speak up about what really goes on behind closed doors in this industry? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this conversation matters. If this video made you see things differently or connected dots you never noticed before, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss future breakdowns. These stories aren't slowing down, and more truths keep coming out every week.